About the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
What up, young adventurers? Dylan here. On today's podcast, I have my friend Anthony Collova. He is a heart-centered entrepreneur who has built and exited multiple seven-figure businesses on online space. He has self-given labels including husband, artist, burner, psychonaut, and one hell of a cookie maker. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome my buddy, my pal, Anthony Collova.
That's a nice intro. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I get into radio DJ late night voice that comes out and I can't help it. I don't know what that's about.
Coming up next, Anthony Collova. Stay tuned.
Get it on the stage. Give him your singles, everyone. Yeah. Hey, everybody.
I know. We were just having a conversation like 5 minutes ago, and all of a sudden you turned into like, hey, like Mr. Cool.
It just comes out, man. It just comes out. It just
I've done enough podcasts of my own and Facebook Live videos, and where I turn into this character version of myself, and I get real preachy. I used to, at least. It's been a long time. I used to have, at one point, I had 400,000+ followers, and so I would do like these Facebook Lives and these videos, and I would just get into like this like I was like, you wouldn't even recognize me these days. I mean, aside from the hair, the beard, and the extra 40 pounds from lack of caring during COVID.
Yeah. Well,
you wouldn't recognize me for a few other reasons.
Talk to me about that, man. So you 400,000 followers. What was it like when you go online, situations where things don't work out so well? We had some streaming issues just before this where we were trying to get shit to work and it wasn't working. We're going, oh no, what's going on? It wasn't public, so nobody saw it. But what was it like to have the pressure? Because a lot of people, they want to get famous online. They want to have hundreds of thousands of people follow them. If only. But they also have this great fear to try to share themselves online, get personal online, do all those things online. So what was it like to overcome that journey of getting comfortable, screaming into the microphone and being all preachy on a soapbox?
It took 2 videos and I loved it.
Really?
My second video, I just took to it, dude. I can do public speaking. I can be in front of a camera. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. It's, and especially back then, at the peak, at the pinnacle of that part of my career, that time of my life, I was seeking that kind of attention. And so it lined up, and it was, so I didn't have a problem being vulnerable. And in fact, I would use my vulnerability as a means to connect to my audience in a greater detail for a more, maybe a select segment of my audience, the ones that would resonate with the vulnerability I was deciding to share in that video or podcast or whatever. And the whole thing lent itself to the persona and the, at the time I was competing in amateur bodybuilding. So I had the physique, and I had, back then, you remember me a little bit different.
I've seen your sexy photos, all greased up and looking sideways in the mirror. You're like, ooh, I thought you were about to give me blue steel,
Is he pooping? What's he doing? Yeah. So it's just a totally different person, but being in front of the camera and I have to also be honest about this. I was helping a lot of people, and I really, my entire life, I've enjoyed being of service to others. And so coming from a space where, number one, I was helping others in a way that, for a time at least, was in alignment, and then in a way that also fulfilled, that filled that God-shaped hole that's inside of all of us, whether you believe in God or not. There's some sort of thing that we all need that we can't get from ourselves, that we have to get from somewhere else, maybe to some degree.
Contribution, is that what you're talking about right now? You're talking about God-shaped hole. Are you saying to be of service to others fills up the God-shaped hole that is in all of us? Because there's a thought process you're talking about of, one, people try to consume love, people try to consume validation. People try to consume things, which isn't necessarily healthy. People run around like rock stars and everybody try to consume love and affection, right? That's not necessarily the God-shaped hole that you're talking about. Is it what you're talking about? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Is it like contribution, or what is that when you're talking a God-shaped hole? Can you break that down a little bit more?
Yeah, contribution does play into it, and it can. I think this is a really big conversation, and so I'll touch on it. But unless you really want the entire podcast to be about God, like then let's touch on it and move forward.
I think
I can talk about it all day long.
Religion and politics. I figure we'll just stay in that area and we'll just go back and forth.
Let's can we maybe talk about abortion?
Yes.
So the God-shaped hole for me is the understanding that I guess it's kind of a cyclical feedback loop of sorts where it really depends on God. I'm not talking about the God of Christ or Islam or any of the religions. I'm not talking about the old man in the sky. I'm talking about the God that is within us and the God that is without us, the God that's out there. And God is a hardcore word. So I get that's going to turn a lot of people off. Call it intelligence, call it technology, call it a being, call it consciousness, whatever that thing is.
The great matrix source code we all live in.
And even if you're an atheist, I have to believe that part of you understands that while you might not believe in a God, that there is something out there at work that is bigger than humans. I mean, right? And so it's touching into that, tapping into that bigger thing that's I feel is infinite. That is also a smaller thing that's within inside me on an infinite level too. So we can go infinitely big or we go infinitely small, kind of like in our conversation that we were talking about in my meditation practice, how I connect to the universe and the greater cosmos and the spirit world above, the creator, whatever that is. I don't give it a name. It's just that thing that powers the cells and my cells and the cosmos. And then I go inside deeper to pay respect and pray and meditate on the life forms within my microbiome, the cells within my bloodstream, the tissues that make up my muscles and my organs, and all the small things that are part of me that go perhaps infinitely small. We don't know, but we get to the Planck distance and then it's like math doesn't work. So there's like bigger and there's smaller. And I believe that we are kind of the embodiment of all of those things. And what we see in this reality is ordinary reality. And then we have non-ordinary reality, which is 99% plus whatever of the existence outside of what we are. So I'm kind of talking about, when I say God-shaped hole, I'm talking about that part of us that hasn't really tapped into the understanding that there's something bigger than us that we can rely on, that we can use the field. Call it the field, the 0-point energy field, that we can tap into the vibrational frequency of the universe, Pancha, Mama, Gaia, whatever that thing is, that some of us choose to nurture a relationship with and tap into both outside of ourselves in a grand scale and inside of ourselves on a micro scale, in order to embody that thing as fully as we possibly can during this existence. And I find that when I do try to embody that, and I try to live within the code that I've been given through my genetics, through my epigenetics, by way of turning on genes and such and whatever, like when I'm in alignment, in other words, with which is inside and that which is outside, that everything lines up, and I have a glow about me. I have I can see differently. I have a vision. I have a perspective that lends itself to me transcending the pains of the moment, and living more fully. And so when I talk about the God-shaped hole, I'm talking about connecting to all that is in order to be absolutely nothing during that moment so that I can find inner peace.
So tying that back to the original question, the streaming online to 400,000 people, the God-shaped hole is not only being of service, but channeling whatever divine being, whatever's going through you, right? And then connecting with it and almost feeling connected with whatever's being channeled through you and having an impact on the people that you are being of service to.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good way to put it, because the more that I'm in service, the more I'm in alignment, and that alignment with the small and the big, by being of service, I'm actually connecting to flow. I'm allowing myself to flow. I'm allowing myself to transcend my fears, or to at least summon courage and walk through my fears. I might be shy, I might be having a bad day, but if I can connect to this thing that reminds me that there's something bigger out there than myself, and I can contribute in a way to inspiring or pulling that out, or connecting with that part of somebody else, then now we have synergy. And I think the more of those opportunities that we create, the better our society is going to be. And so while having 400,000 followers, by being of service, by in one business helping people lose weight, in another business helping people with psychedelic experiences, and another one affirmations and life coaching types. Like, there's all these different ways that I've been of service. And when I am, I feel good.
Yeah.
And so when I find that when like that's a really good barometer. Like, pleasure is a really good barometer. When I do something and I feel, it was Abraham Lincoln had a quote, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That is my religion. And I kind of subscribe to that maxim to some degree, because if I do the things that make me feel good while in alignment, I can do some shit that makes me feel good for the moment that might not be in alignment, right? But if I'm in alignment with my moral, my ethical code, my own personal internal moral and ethical code that I've taken years to figure out, if I'm in alignment with that and I'm being of service and I'm inspiring other people, there is this reciprocal effect that I'm fulfilled. And that helps fill that God-shaped hole.
Yeah, I was about to call you out. I'm like, okay, what about hedonistic behavior, where all you're doing is you're just going through buffets and doing laps like you're at a rally 5,000 kind of thing. So what you're talking about is feeling the pleasure from knowing, not only doing good, being in alignment, and you're having this impact. You have this ability to it's this energy that you get. So my question for you is this: is when you're talking about it took you forever to find out your religion and your alignment, what does it look like? How do you recognize when you're out of alignment, and then how do you shift the system to get realigned?
Jesus, dude. And I say that with no pun intended.
With Jesus? Oh.
No, you just said how long it took me a while to find my religion, and I want to be clear that I don't follow a religion. It took me a while to find my system. Yeah. Right. And it's not a system that anybody has put on paper. It's a system that I have in countless journals over the years, that I've had in countless therapy sessions, in countless psychedelic experiences, in countless successful and failed businesses, successful and failed relationships, tons of failure. You know this, being an entrepreneur, that we can learn more from failure than we can learn from success. And any day. Powerful. Yeah. And dude, and it go forward and fail often, right? Like that's a lot of what it took. It took me, number one, being willing to fail, and number two, being willing to, or understanding that the failure was useful, in fact, powerful, as long as I was willing to extract a lesson from the pain of the behavior that caused the failure to begin with. And if I could extract that lesson, then I can repeat it. I can repeat the behavior in a modified way that maybe a little bit different from the first time I did it. Maybe a lot different, maybe not at all. Right. Yeah. But as long as I can pull that lesson, I never have to experience the pain of that. That symptom, that sacrifice, that situation ever again, and I can go on in a forward moving motion, again in alignment, in a way that serves me and serves humanity and the evolution of our species.
So you're talking about this in terms of the level of your transformation, the level of your alignment is how much you're willing to face your own truth, look into the mirror and face that dark side of yourself and not scream and run away. And the more you're willing to look at that and look at those lessons and sit in it, you can pull those lessons out versus ignoring, deflecting, deferring.
Yeah. It comes down to facing the fears, and I mean, we can continue to beat ourselves up and pass judgment on ourselves and go down this negative spiral, right? And for the longest time, I thought that negative downward spiral was infinite. I thought I could just continue going down and down and down until one time I got to the point of suicidal thoughts. I'm not a suicidal person, you know that. I'm a very positive person, but I was having a very difficult time. and these thoughts were just bombarding me. This is after some really intense psychedelic experiences. And when I got to the psychedelic thought, I'm like, I guess the downward spiral is not infinite. It's okay. Here's the end of the line. Do I stay in this pain and keep on having these very disturbing, very difficult thoughts, which unfamiliar, totally foreign to me? And you know me, like that's not. But after coming through some very difficult, resistant-filled psychedelic journeys, I found myself in this place. The only way for me to transcend that was to turn around and face what it was that I was refusing to face, and summon up enough courage to look at the issue that was in front of me. And once I did, and I walked through that door and I said, I'm going to look at it, I shot up the spiral in my head, and in the imagery within my meditative mind, shot up the spiral, and I continued to go into the abyss and learned countless lessons. Now, not everybody watching this might relate to the psychedelic space. And so that's going to be kind of a difficult concept to grasp onto. But regardless if you have participated with psychedelics or entheogens or not, the idea that facing our fears and head on and walking into them as opposed to running away and screaming, as you kind of said, that right there for me is where the work is. And with the one thing that I've learned from this, Dylan, and you might be able to relate to this, is that the fear is never true. The fear is a dirty fucking liar, and it will always tell you something. Like when I turned around and I visually in my meditative space saw a doorway that I had to walk through, and I knew the monster that was on the other side of that door, the guardian, right? I had this image of this painful situation I didn't want to look at from my childhood, from my adulthood, and the way this thing is manifested over the years. I thought I knew what was on the other side of the doorway. I thought I knew what was going to happen as I walked through. That's what I was running from, the unwillingness to look at my own shit, the unwillingness to look at my trauma, the unwillingness or desire, obviously, to face my pain, to face my perpetrator, to face myself and those perpetrations I've caused by my own actions. I thought I knew what was on the other side of that door, and as soon as I walked through it, all of my fears were going to manifest. I didn't want to take my life. I don't want to say I'm stronger than that, because I think that does a disservice to people who have chosen to opt out of this existence. But it was just not in the cards for me, and it never has been, because I view death and suicide as an opportunity to transcend. And I take this from the psychedelic space. So when death appeared to me, I'm like, this is my move. This is the opportunity to grow beyond my current situation. Part of me has to die in order for me to go to the next level. What is that part? And so when I walked through the door, it took 5 seconds and all of my fears fell to the side. I saw what the real issue was, and I just sat there in this healing space. Again, I was meditating, sat in this healing space, and I just watched the fears crumble and disintegrate, and I was filled with light and love and truth.
Let me ask you this. So right now you made a really interesting point. The people that I've noticed that are able to transcend the most, the people that are willing, that not only view the ego death as something not to be afraid of, but view it as the understanding that they're going to become more from it, right? And so you have that association. So what was your first memory? What was your first experience? What caused you to actually view your death or your ego death as I know what this is. This is a signal to push through, not a signal to turn around. What was that? What gave you that belief? Was it a certain incident?
Ayahuasca ceremony. My first ayahuasca retreat, not my first ceremony, but my first retreat, where I did ayahuasca 4 times, plus a number of other plant medicines in Costa Rica. I became well aware that, and I had heard this too. I heard, there's different forms of ego death, or different definitions, I should say. I had watched some videos before. I watched a lot of videos and did a lot of research, because you know this. I'm going to just inform anybody who's watching right now that I have 24 years of recovery from drugs and alcohol. So before deciding to commune with plant medicine, I did a lot of research to make sure that my recovery was kind of safe, right? Yeah. And so going into the plant medicine, I already had an understanding of transcendence, plus my spiritual practice without the plant medicine for years, being sober for 24 years, working the steps in the AA program and the NA program and the SA program and some of these other 12-step things where I'm just trying to collectively come together and get my own ideas. I had an understanding of maybe not what happens when we die, but like how letting part of ourselves die gives way to the rebirth. If you want to look at Shiva, the destroyer and the creator, like it's kind of the same thing. Shiva destroys the mountain, but now there's a beach in front of the water. Like it's kind of like one of those things. Destroying who I was, what I thought about myself, and letting that part go by way of surrender and ending resistance, releasing to it, to come through the other side. And it was made abundantly, obviously, emotionally clear in ayahuasca, in the only way that Mother Ayahuasca can show you this, the more true than true, more real than real, where once I let go and I allowed myself to die, ayahuasca, I blew off into the heavens and soared the cosmos. And then I had another psychedelic experience with bufo, which is the toad venom, the toad secretion that contains 5-MeO-DMT. I don't want to get too out there with the psychedelics and the entheogens for your users, because I don't know how many of them or whatever. But that experience is one of death. It is one of transcendence. If you resist, you go to hell, and your ego tears itself down over and over and over countless times until you surrender. And if you surrender and accept your death, as it feels like you're dying, that's what actually it feels like when you do this stuff. And have you ever done 5-MeO-DMT?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Not successfully. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you can do it unsuccessfully.
and I tried it, nothing happened. I didn't blast off or anything.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So it could be a dose issue. It could have been a product issue, whatever. But when you break through, when you have a full breakthrough, and you accept this death, the experience that most people have, which I had, is pure ego death, where everything falls. All of Anthony went away, and I resonated at the frequency of the God's eternal heart existing as pure love for eternity outside of time and space, as everything that exists, the only thing that exists, the source of energy, pure love. That's kind of it's ineffable. There's no words that can really do it. But like that was like first and second, ayahuasca and bufo were the times that I realized that transcendence, the death comparison or analogy is one of transcendence. And so taking that and integrating those lessons into my life, I'm able to see that even on a smaller level, I don't have to physically die, but there is part of me that does have to cease to exist in order for another part to come and take its place. And that those parts are waiting in line for me to let go of the things that don't serve me, to let go of the pain, the trauma, the judgment, the owning of parts of myself that were inherited or projected by other people that I, for some reason, decided to claim and use as part of my identity or part of my behavior system or part of my pattern. And it became it no longer served me. And so when I let go of those things, I'm filled with this other new powerful energy that is difficult to describe, but obvious when it happens.
Yeah. What's interesting is you're using words, right, that for other people, because they haven't experienced it, it doesn't have the same impact. So like some of these lessons that you go off into and say do ayahuasca and entheogens, and we can jump to entrepreneurship and other subject in a minute or so. But one of the things that you're talking about is unless you get dragged through hell and you suffer deeply, that when you come back and you're like, oh yeah, one with the cosmos and the entities, and I was all the source, right? People go like, you could see that on an Instagram post, you could see that as you're going through a TikTok, you could see these messages, right? But unless you've earned the ticket, you don't have it, because what real education is this? Is experience plus emotion equals retention, right? So the greater the emotional experience with the and it coming together, the more it's going to have a deeper impact that will fundamentally shift the way that you operate in this reality. And so you can go on to Reddit subreddit motivation, or you can go on and you could look at these quotes, but unless you have these fundamental things, because those quotes are all well and good until you get punched in the mouth, until something knocks you down, until you feel like you're going to die, whether you feel like you're going to die in your relationship because your significant other leaves you, whether you feel like you're going to die because your business is on fire and going to the ground, whether you feel like you're going to die because you got hit and you feel like you have suicidal thoughts. These are all different types of deaths that you have: death of the relationships, death of the ego, death of the self. But unless you've actually gone through the fires, that's why I was asking you, how do you know? Because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to seek it, and it's another thing to get excited by the experience of it. And so, I mean, what advice would you give to people that maybe don't have access to this type of being able to go off to the jungles and do this type of stuff? How would they be able to have this type of mindset shift to be able to embrace this type of seeking of transformation?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's hard to coach this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so it's hard for me, right? So everybody is on their independent journey and has to stand tall like the mighty oak on their own and go through the winter and the summer and the winter and the summer over and over until they get it. Now, what I would say is that it's feeling. There's a feeling that comes along with it, and feeling is when thoughts and emotion line up. And as long as you're in alignment, I say you, but I'm always talking about me. As long as I'm in alignment, that feeling is undeniable. And so, I touched on this earlier. Go towards what feels good, where there's pleasure. I know I'm doing something good when there's
pleasure with alignment. Yeah, thank you.
Non-hedonistic pleasure, right? Yeah, I have to be in alignment, and that might mean I got to cut out drugs or alcohol, or I got to stop wanking for a time being, or I got to stop fantasizing about women besides my wife. Maybe I've got to start saving money. Maybe I need to heal a relationship with one of my parents or siblings. There's always these things, and there's always going to be work that needs to be done in terms of our healing. But I find that when the more baggage I'm carrying around, the harder it is to tap into the feeling of pleasure, and the more fleeting it is. But when I've healed my relationships, when I've made amends, when I've asked for forgiveness, when I've forgiven myself, when I've talked to other people openly and put a voice to my own trauma and put a voice to the shitty, fucked up, selfish, pig-headed stuff that I've done and I've participated in. And when I look at the pain I've caused others, and I look at the pain that's been caused on me, and I see the correlation there, and I'm able to process it either with a therapist or a counselor or a sponsor or a good friend, when I journal about it, when I meditate about it, and when I refuse to run away from it, and when I look at it, I have less baggage. We know people who are walking around light as a butterfly because they are not holding on to the shit that they used to define them.
Yeah.
And when we can let go of that stuff, I mean, the softest breeze can take a butterfly 1,000 miles, right?
Yeah.
But if that butterfly is carrying a fuck ton of baggage with them, it's going to take a bulldozer to get you to move, and you're not going to feel shit. But when we're in alignment, because we've looked and we've processed and we've done the difficult work of healing, then that feeling where thought and emotion intersect, it becomes much more apparent and much more powerful, like the breeze that takes the butterfly.
What's great about that, and I want to touch on that, is that there's this great awakening going on with people, getting in the space, looking for alignment, stuff like that. But I've noticed that there's people that see the messages, that hear the messages, that want to be this, but they're very surface level, right? They're like, everything's okay, and they're like above, they're just heads just barely above water, just trying to keep their to keep their shit together. And it's not judgment or something like that. It's just they haven't looked below the surface to see, okay, where am I out of misalignment? When the things can creep up on everybody, it can creep up on me, it can creep up on you, it can creep on everybody. But it's one of the things that if you feel heavy, when I felt heavy and I reflected inwards and I go, okay, where am I out of misalignment? What am I not facing? What am I not willing to do? And you can, and then you start to do those things. You do get lighter, you do get better. But it's also, it's part of it. It's not like, it's not always about, just don't do any work. Oh, just eat whatever you want. Oh, there's a lot of pleasure with just doing whatever I want. There's there's two different types of energy sources, right? There's the energy source of sugar, right, which is that quick energy burst, and then there's the energy source of fat that gives you all that's longer and sustainable. There's the energy source of fear and anxiety that drives people, and then there's the energy source of love and fulfillment that drives you. It's like a slower burn but more long lasting type of thing. And I feel that most people drive on this fear and this anxiety and just and they get burnt out on that type of thing. And what you're saying is that you're basically switching fuel sources. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. You're shifting from scarcity into abundance.
Yeah. Yes. So ways that people can do that is to, what you're talking about is to recognize the misalignments that the people have, and then to face that with whatever means is at your disposal, whether that's
whether it's psychedelics or a therapy,
difficult talks. Yeah, therapies, a hard conversation with yourself, letting go of baggage, understanding, and part of that is like, for example, like maybe I need to give up drugs, maybe I need to let go of this stuff, maybe these are some of the things that I got, and I think that's really powerful. And because there's also the quote that I often think about a lot, and probably this is one of the quotes that I think about more than anything else, and there's a bunch of them, is often people live lives of quiet desperation and they go to the grave with a song unsung. And I think so many people are unwilling to do that. But when they actually feel free to sing that song, I had a lot of fear, a shit ton of doubt doing podcasts. I did my first 10 podcasts and I felt they were so bad. I burnt to the ground. No one's ever seen them. I did them. I had so much fear and I was like, oh my God, how many times am I going to say the word, how many times am I going to just freak out? Oh my God, I can't do this. And I had on my vision board, I have a podcast, and I wouldn't do it. And it's funny because once I got started and once I got into it, and now so many into it now, I look back and I'm like, why was I afraid? Like, why was I so scared? Why do I care what people think of me online talking about drugs and jerking off and whatever the things that is that we talk about, whatever the things is we get into. But there's this thing of fear is a fucking liar. And I just don't know. I just don't like. And without the whole psychedelic thing is like, what other like. Besides facing the identity death, which is a big, scary beast, in terms of how do people first become aware of the misalignments and the sneaky hidden fears that is stealing their energy source?
Pain and resistance.
Wherever
you're pain and resistance, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. There's probably a billion other answers. Wherever I feel pain, and I'm not talking about grief. I'm talking about pain. Wherever I am resisting change, let's be clear, I'm resisting growth. And if I'm resisting growth, then that means that I'm choosing to stay exactly the same as I am. And if I'm in pain, if I don't have as much money as I want, if I don't have the relationship I want, if I don't have the material or the mindset, if I have lack in my life, if I'm jealous, if there's things I want that are escaping me, it's because I am unwilling to grow. Back it up. I'm unwilling to change, go deeper. I'm scared of change, go deeper. I've got some fear. I'm listening to that fucking liar fear telling me that I'm no good. I've got trauma that's unresolved. I've got issues that I haven't faced. It's safer for me to keep on going in this direction than it is to walk into the unknown. When I was in treatment, my therapist put it like this. This is a great analogy. He's like, Anthony, you're sitting in a warm bucket of shit and you're loving it. And I was like, what? I'm like, what? Can you help me out with this one? He goes, well, think about it like this. You're sitting in a warm bucket of your own shit. It's stinky. It's gross. It's ridden with bacteria and all, who knows what. Other people probably see it. Now, mind you, I was a drug addict at age 20 21 went into treatment. I was a mess.
Yeah.
And everybody's telling you that on the outside of the bucket, life is so much better. Life is so much better on the other side of the bucket. And you've stepped out of the bucket. You've stood up. And holy shit, is it cold? And now it's even stinkier because the wind is blowing this stuff around and it's crispy. And fuck that. I'm not going to step out of this warm. It's familiar. It's comfortable. It's even if it's disgusting, at least it's predictable. And there's some consultation in that. There's some safety and security in that.
Yeah.
But it's once we step out and we go through the the cleaning process, and we do the work of hosing ourselves off and scrubbing and cleaning and primping, and then we get dressed, and then we go to work, and then we start fulfilling ourselves and our neighbors and our community and our society and our species. And then it's like, it doesn't stop. But if you're going to sit there in your warm bucket of shit and trade safety and predictability to avoid walking into the unknown, then you're letting fear win.
Mm-hmm.
That's paraphrased, but that's kind of the example that he gave me.
I love that. And let's segue this with this topic. And I think you hit on a really good point. A lot of people, there's this thing called the Great Resignation going on, where a lot of people are quitting their jobs and they're trying to start new things. They're trying to get in these spaces, but there's a lot of fear and doubt and uncertainty that they won't survive, that they will die if they try this. And then because of that, there's this thing where, and then when you get into business, there's like constant progression, because as you know, as the business grows and as the business evolves, you need to be able to transform the business. It's one thing to be a solo entrepreneur. It's another thing to have employees, another thing to grow that. And so you need to be able to evolve along the way. Absolutely. Can you talk about a little bit about this transition from lessons learned from the drug addicted Anthony in his 20s to creating multiple businesses and the transformations you've had to adopt? Because I truly believe that businesses is one of the greatest transformational mechanisms that people have, not only for their own lives, but for being able to create those things for other people. So can you talk to me a little bit about that, some early lessons or things that come to mind about some transformative moments that you've had while you shift your identity?
Yeah. The first thing I want to say before I go back and talk about some of the transformative moments is that the business, like you said, is one of the biggest ways. I don't know how you put it, but to me, what I heard was entrepreneurship, business, creating a business. The business is a microcosm of our own internal alignment. If your business is not where it wants to be, and this is not my quote, this is a great quote by an amazing coach named Alex Sharfin. If your business is not where you want it to be, it's because you're not able to run it yet. Right. And so like the outward expression of my business, the quality of life of my employees, the quality of my customer service and the customers and the products and every aspect down the chain of business is a reflection of my central nervous system. It's a reflection of me, right? Because what I do in business, the way I treat my employees, the way I treat my customers, the way I treat the processes is basically built off of the way that I think it comes out of here, which comes out of here, which is it. This is a bigger expression of me, just like an artist, just like a painting or a sculpture or blowing glass or some beautiful piece of artwork. As an entrepreneur, we are creating our own art and we are using our creativity in order to express that art. Now, not all art is beautiful and not all art is provoking, but all art is true.
Yeah.
There's a truth in it because the person who's creating it is expressing some emotional, and maybe I should back that up and say all art is true when it's paired with the emotion that's required for it to be considered art by the artist, something like that. But that business is an expression of like what's going on inside me. And so like with my old company, it got to, I mean, I did the math recently, and it turns out that we affected and impacted close to 25 million people.
Wow.
Yeah, that was ifwam.com, which I exited in 2019. Now, the amount of stress that was happening within my system as a result of having to maintain this mega situation, helping that many people and doing right by them, like I was under stress and I was not in alignment the entire time. And so I was doing the best I could do, and I did a really good job, especially, comparatively. I always wanted to be the boss that I never had. So I was a good boss, but like, I also complained a lot, and I also, I don't want to say I took it out on my customers, but like I didn't always empathize or sympathize with my customers, with my clients, with my employees, because there was some discord, disharmony within me, and that came out in the business and it manifested everywhere else. Right. So when we're in, again, it goes back to alignment. When we are in alignment, we're congruent within our business. As long as our heart and the concept of the company are congruent, and then we're in alignment ourselves, then there's no limitations. Now, did you want to break to say something, or do you want me to jump into your question?
Let me say something with it, then jumping after that. What I think is, you're totally right. And what I think is amazing is that the business is a microcosm of my alignment, right? And I maybe butchered that a bit, but I love the concept of it being the fact that you come in with your own personalities, you come in with your own habits, your own systems, your own frameworks, your own mentality. You have all this stuff that makes up you. And when you go into the business, you spread that to everybody else on your team. You hire people that are like you to a degree. You hire these different reflections, and they become pieces of you. And you are the heart and the head that moves forward on the business. And then what's interesting is it just made me think of disassociation. It made me think of when people are in a really negative space and they're angry at everybody else. It's because they're mostly angry at themselves, because they can't they can't accept themselves, so they can't accept anybody else. And so in business, if people are messy and disorganized and they're not willing to put in the time or the effort, and they're complaining to everybody else, why all of these other people, all of these employees, all of these co-founders, all these other people, if only they would listen to me, everything would be okay. But right, it's this victim mentality, and then it's their unwillingness to face their own demons. They're unwilling to have their own ego death and go, I need to become more in order for this to become better. And it says if they're willing to transform themselves, they can transform their business. And then there's a thing. Then you have to keep doing that, right? And you have to keep evolving that process. That was one of the thoughts I had of that, and it made me think of like, if you're struggling in your business, reflect inwards on what piece you're struggling with yourself, fix that, create realignment, and then go outwards from there.
Yeah. So, well, let's take that's exactly it. And let's take a look at that same messy, sloppy, unorganized person, right? Mm-hmm. If I could be a messy, because I want to be clear about this, I could be a messy, sloppy, disorganized person and still be self-aware. Mm-hmm. And if I understand my own limitations and I've looked at them, I can hire an operator. I can be the visionary, the sloppy, messy, dirty visionary, and I can hire an operator in order to make happen all of the vision, to bring the vision forth with the team. That right there is the break that allows for the alignment that I have within myself and the self-awareness and the understanding of self to now be projected through a lens, through a projector that actually sends a signal of my self-awareness rather than my disorganization out to the company. Because I putting people in charge that are organized and not messy and can pick up my own limitations because I'm aware of them. If I'm not aware of them, now we're talking about the person that you described that's building a company that's totally messy and disorganized itself.
Well, because they won't own it, and you understand your limitations so that you can transcend them. And what you're looking at is from the point of one of the main reasons why people get coaches, right? You understand, hey, I struggle with fitness. Maybe I'm not good at diet, or I'm not good at these other things. And so you cognitively outsource a coach, and they go, hey man, I'm a badass at this. Like, let's work together. I'm here for you. Give me a call and it could be business. It could be fitness. It could be relationships. Yeah. And I love that, because you're right. You don't necessarily need to be a master at everything, but you do need to understand what you suck at and what you
Yeah.
enjoy, and then start cutting out pieces. Like
Yeah.
my fight. One of the first things I ever did in business, and I realized that I don't enjoy finances and tracking finances and doing those whole things and stuff like that. So I brought on someone who's a master at that, and I put literally zero like look into that. I dive into the area, like some of the key areas that I need to, but that is one of the areas that I'm like, I'm not going to become a certified CPA or CFO or any of those types of things. But what I will do is have someone else do it that I trust and that I love and that I care about. And then we're going to work together to become more. So, that was a very, very, very good point, because I think I made a blanket statement and you called me out on it. So I appreciate that.
No, I actually, I agree 100% with what you said. I just wanted to give the opposing, the transcendent viewpoint.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely, because here's the thing, Dylan, we don't have to we don't have to overcome our limitations. We have to transcend them. I don't have to become a CFO. I don't have to know how to code, right? Yeah. I have to know what I want and know how to get it, right? Yeah. And if I know that, then I can put those things in place. But a lot of people, and the same, you could have somebody who knows how to outsource all the right people and all of the, the right positions and fill their entire org chart. And if they're a dick and they're just a selfish, greedy bastard, and they're not centered in their heart, and they don't, like the way they treat those people, that company is going to have, like, look at Bezos, like, amazing company. I don't know him. I don't know if he's in alignment or out of alignment, but I know that his employees are pissing in bottles to save. Like, there's something out of alignment with that company. Yeah. Right. And some of the things that have come out of his personal life lead onlookers to say, yeah, maybe not the purest of hearts, right? Something happening. But so there's all kinds of levels.
Because what you're talking about is the absolute highest of achievers, right? The absolute highest of achievers, like Bezos and these high ones. And there's this thought process of, can you have an incredibly high achiever that is also incredibly heart-centered and aligned? Can you have absolute achievement and absolute heart-centeredness? And in terms of that, because it's such an extreme, there's a theory that you have 4 burners on a stove, and if you want to crank up the achievement in the business, you've got to turn down the relationships, and you got to turn on these other ones so you have more gas for the system. That's one of those old paradigms, right? Is that a fallacy, or do you think it's possible to be able to have a heart-centered Jeff Bezos who runs this gigantic megalithic company that it does, and also pay fair wages to everybody throughout the whole thing, and value his opinions?
Those people exist. They exist. I think there's most of us would think that there's concessions that have to be made along the way, but I think that those heart-centered people stay more in line with their heart as much as they possibly can. Now, anybody I talk about in the next 2 minutes, I don't know if they're in alignment, but all I see is the example that they're setting publicly, right? Bill Gates, how much has he donated to AIDS research? How much has he donated to high schools and sports teams and medical advancements? How much he's got the funds? He's a philanthropist. I don't know his motivation. I can't say he's in alignment, but I do know that, now on the business side of it, maybe like I don't like, Microsoft Word, or I don't like the product, or there's something within the company. But I think him using the company in order to facilitate the philanthropy that he does with the charity and all that stuff, there's something to be said about that, where part of him is in alignment. I would guess. Maybe he just wants to look good, right? Yeah. Look at the dude that started 5 Hour Energy. I think he's an Indian. He's from India, and he started 5 Hour Energy and is now putting all these what's the term for the machines that take desaltification, desalinization takes the salt out of the ocean. He's trying to provide drinking water from the ocean for the entire world with the money he's got from 5 Hour Energy. Cool. That's right. So cool. There are those kinds of people that exist. Now, I don't know how the corporation is run. I don't know if his employees are happy. I don't know if they get a living wage. Right. But I do know that there are people like that exist and that try to do the best that they can possibly do within the compassionate capitalist framework.
Yeah. And that's the concept that Explore is. And I don't know if people know about the terminology, but compassion capitalist. That's a concept. That's a term. I think I heard the guy at Whole Foods talking about it. Can you elaborate a little bit about the compassionate capitalist terminology?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a better definition than the one I'm going to spew out, but basically to me, it's having a heart-centered or a compassionate person as the visionary in a typical, not typical, in a well-structured organization. There will be a visionary I'm the visionary of any company I create. And then below me, I have an operator. And then below the operator are the different roles that get filled out. And so me being the visionary, being compassionate towards others, meaning I take into consideration the well-being and the wellness of and the happiness, the pleasure, the abundance, the serenity of my employees, their comfort level and everything. That's why we used to get, here's an example of what compassionate capitalism meant to me. Every Wednesday we had a massage therapist come to the office. Everybody got a table massage. We bought lunch every Friday. The minimum starting wage was $15 an hour. You're quickly elevated to 16 to 17 to 20 within 6 months or something like that. And for where we were at in the country, that was in good competitive wage. With today's standards, we would have offered remote working from home pre-COVID, but that just wasn't a thing back then. So we were always looking for these ways of incorporating the, you bring your dog to work type of day, these types of things. Now, these are just small examples. I'm not saying that's like the most compassionate company in the world, but these are ways that I made sure that my employees, my team members were happy, were taken care of, that they could pay their bills and have a good life with their family based on the work that they were doing, the hours. And then we gave like bonuses, and we always had parties, and there was never lack within the company.
Yeah.
Right. And so go ahead, please.
Yeah. Question for you. I mean, I know, and I don't know if you want to complete the thought, but I would love to know, were you always a compassionate capitalist, when you started out the first business, or was this something that you aware was an actual social, emotional, competitive advantage that had net returns on your soul? Like, what about
that?
Okay.
That's a good question, because my first company was a hot dog cart, and it was just me. And my next company was the first one that I sold, secondskinaudio.com. That one, I had one employee, and I was cool with him, and he was a warehouse dude, and he set his own hours, and I didn't really care. I was young at the time. Wasn't so concerned about I was trying to make money. It was when I had my first couple of employees, when it went from just one employee to 2 to 3 to 4, I was like, oh, I have a fucking responsibility here. These people need to be taken care of. They're counting on me for their well-being. They're counting on me to do the marketing, to get the phone to ring, to get the traffic on the website, to convert. They are counting on me to feed their families. They're counting on me for their medical, for their dental. They're counting on me for their groceries, for all of these things. And it added a realness to my situation as I leveled up from just having one employee who was kind of there in the warehouse sometimes and was cool, to having 3 or 4. I took that responsibility very serious, and reaping dividends on my soul is exactly how it felt. It wasn't, the angle was not, oh, if I treat them good, they're gonna treat my customer. We all know that if you treat your employees well, your customers are going to be happier or whatever. There's all those levels, but it was, no, I feel better knowing that my people they walk into the door with a smile on their face in the morning because they're happy to be at work, because they love their job. And that makes me feel good. And my thing was, I touched on this earlier. I always wanted to be the boss that I never had. And you had bosses, and I don't know how many of them you would stay in touch with today. But I've never called any of my previous bosses. Like, they were never, except for my dad. Worked for my dad for a while, but like, most of them are not compassionate. Most of them are just numbers and interested in projecting their own trauma and their own understanding of the workforce onto their employees in order to get things done, in order to meet their quotas, in order to make their boss happy, or in order to make money and get that boat or the jet ski or the whatever. And so I didn't want to contribute to that. I didn't want to participate in a system that used people as commodities. I wanted to lift people up and go beyond transactional management and go into transformational leadership. And I wanted to get to the point where my employees trusted me, trusted themselves, and knew that I trusted them to get the job done. And so I hired a coach. I touched on his name earlier, Alex Sharfin, and he took me from a place of working 65 hours a week to building a culture, heart-centered based company where I had about 5 to 10 hours of responsibility every week, and everything else went to my employees, and I trusted them to do everything that they needed to do, and I gave them the tools and resources to do that. And just doing that alone, take away the money. If you give somebody trust and you give them the responsibility and you say, I believe that you can do this, give me your best stuff, when they bring it back, I can now coach them rather than criticize them. And coming from a place of coaching the team is much more transformational and much more uplifting and inspiring to them, because they can learn the lessons and they can grow from it and then blossom into whatever it is. And I also got to make sure that they're doing the thing that aligns with their heart. Yeah, I might hire you as a graphic designer, but I might find like 3 or 4 weeks in that, yeah, you're a good graphic designer, but you're better at this other thing, and it fulfills your heart to do this other thing. And if I have a position that can pull them into that other thing, then they're going to blossom in that role even that much more.
How would you today, let's just say you started a new company, and you knew you had some employees, right? And you had however many that you're getting started with. What would be some things that you'd be putting in place to make sure that you would be the boss today, knowing, post-COVID era, about all these other things? What would be some practices or some habits or some rituals that you would do to make sure that you could be coaching and be in the transformational space, and you could do all that kind of work to make sure that you're in alignment with yourself and your team and your company?
It would all be laid out. And like it is, I'm building a new company right now called changa.com. And I have a whole spreadsheet where it's like, probably pull it up right now and read some things off, but it starts with being a culture driven company, heart centered company that has culture driven team. And from there, we grow into the vision of the company, making sure I hire the right people for the job, making sure those people are in alignment with themselves. Like, that's important, right? As much as I enjoy coaching people, I would prefer to deal with self-aware people who have already, come up through the ranks in terms of their own self-awareness, which I think is really big. And then from there, I would go into skill set comes after culture. Make sure that they have the right skill set. And I even, when hiring people, I look at like human design. I look at, for those of your podcast followers that don't know what human design is, look it up. It's kind of astrological. It's a lot of woo. It's some fluffy shit, but for some fucking reason, it seems to work out. And so I stopped questioning it. I'm not big into astrology, but there's something there. And so, and finding people that are into human design, finding people that are maybe into ayahuasca. This is all culture driven stuff. That's the important thing for me, is culture first, skill set second, because I can find a graphic designer, and I don't want to interview 500 graphic designers and then pick out the 3 that have done ayahuasca and that are self-aware. I want to talk to a bunch of ayahuasca people and find a graphic designer in that community.
Yeah, you want to find culture first, skill set second. Let me ask this question though. So that makes a ton of sense with me, and I completely resonate with that. Looking at that though, in terms of keeping alignment with them, in terms of marching to the same beat, right? So you find the right culture fits, a bunch of people that are already aware, who have done shadow work, who have done their own progression path, that are skilled and professionals at their own things that they've done, and they're in that space, right? But as you march, there is a natural sense of drift. Things happen where you tend to misalign. You have 10 things where you misfire. Things are misunderstood, where things that, even if you have a bunch of woke dudes that you're hanging out with, right? There can be things that can turn into resentment and resistance and things like that. And there could be blank spots on that. How do you keep alignment and culture alignment with people as you move through this, as the challenges?
Yeah, so that just comes down to congruency and consistent communication. So I had the good fortune of hiring, again, the same coach that I'm referring to, who had tremendous impact on my life and on our business, where he had this system called the waterfall. And it started with your annual goal, your 6 month, your quarterly, your monthly, your weekly. And the way that he explains it is, if you go into any football team and you say, hey, what are the goals of the team? What are your goals? They're going to say, well, it's Super Bowl, or it's a Hall of Fame, it's Super Bowl, it's championship, it's whatever, all the way down to who am I playing next week? Who am I lining up against in today's game? How do I show up for practice? How do I lace up what are my thoughts when I lace up my shoestrings? Like, it goes all the way down. So he does that in business. And so you have, annual meeting, you have you have 4 quarterly meetings, you have 1 6-month or 2 6-month meetings, you have 12 monthlies, you have 52 weeklies, and then you have daily 220, I think it is, work days per year typically. Daily, he calls them huddles. And when you go on a huddle, it's like, here are the topics, here's the things everybody's responsible for, here's the direct, and we know, like, if we get this done today, then this week we're going to get this done, and then this month, and then this quarter, and so on. And what usually happens is you hit your annual goals like after 6 or 7 months. And so it keeps everybody on the same page. Everybody there's a level of accountability, there's a level of intimacy, there's a level of transparency, so that, like, not only is it like you know who's working on what, but you know when they drop the ball, and you know when they really succeed, and then you praise that. You praise, and you don't set the bar super high. You set the bar kind of low so that they can reach it, so that you're always winning, always winning, always winning. And when a team comes together on a daily huddle and is always fucking winning, where did we win yesterday? That's one of the questions. And like 3 or 4 people are like, I got this done, I did that, I got this idea. And then it magnifies the entire thing. So it's not my system, but it is a system. And I believe that systems and processes reduce noise and pressure. And that was the biggest thing that he taught me. And so my biggest thing is to reduce my noise and pressure by taking care of my team, by giving them the trust that I know that they can, handle the things, by giving them all of the resources that they need, by having the vision clearly laid out that we talk about every day, that's based on the annual meeting. And as long as I stay in alignment and I hire based on culture, and my culture dictates that those people are in alignment, there's no way Changa.com is not going to blow the fuck up.
Beautiful, man. Thank you for that. And I completely agree with that. That is actually very similar pattern that I use to run my own company, where I have annuals and quarters and not monthlies, but I do have weekly goals and those targets. I love that pattern of behavior. It's a bitch to do the work. It's a bitch to set up and have all those meetings, but it is an infinitely valuable on the back end. Again, the identity death of that. One of the things I'm letting go is being a lazy bastard, and just knowing I need to put in more effort because the return is so great. I just think it's a powerful lesson. I want to segue into Changa.com. I want to know what it is and what's your holy grail for it, right? What is it as a thing, and what do you ultimately, what is your Super Bowl Hall of Fame process thing for that look like?
It's funny that you say that, because I don't have a Super Bowl Hall of Fame for this one. This is something I'm doing that is not connected to money. It's just a fun thing I'm throwing together, and I'm just going to see what happens. And, I part of the reason why, Dylan, is I'm not wanting to take it too seriously is because I sold the last company 2019, and I've been doing a lot of personal growth, personal development work, and I don't have a job. I'm retired. So I'm sitting in this space, and to activate to the degree that Changa.com, or like I own yogapants.com, right? Like, so to activate to a degree that these domain names would be worthy of would require that mentality. And I'm kind of like, I just want to ease into it right now as a fun project, because I don't need to work. I can help some people, and let's just see how it goes. That's not a fear of failure, or is it going to work? Is it not? I know it's going to work. I know my skill set. I know I can make it work. It's just, do I want to activate right now? And I'm kind of like more in the hobby stage than I am a super big stage. But to answer your question, what is Changa.com for us in the US, Changa.com overseas, Changa. Changa is an entheogen or psychedelic. It is, if you look at ayahuasca, it's 2 ingredients. It's the ayahuasca vine, which is MAOI, and plus chacruna, or there's a couple other different things that contain the DMT. DMT cannot be ingested orally because the enzymes will break it off and it won't be bioavailable. And so when you add an MAOI, monoamine oxidase inhibitor, it inhibits the enzyme that breaks down the DMT, and it allows it to become bioavailable, which allows you to go on your ayahuasca journey. This would be considered the smokable version of that, where it has, you can use a bunch of different herbs. There's recipes that have 10 different ingredients. There's some recipes floating around online that have only 2 ingredients, which would be DMT and an MAOI. And then the third ingredient is the actual spice itself of the dimethyltryptamine, which people add at home in order to saturate the plant matter. It looks like tea leaves. It'll look like tea leaves. And once you add the psychoactive ingredient, you can vape it or smoke it. You can even ingest it as a tea at that point, because you maybe an hour or two you could drink the tea of the MAOI, and then you can take the active ingredient separately, and you will get a very similar to ayahuasca feel without going 6, 7, 8 hours. It'll be more like a 30 to 60, 90-minute journey. It'll be much more mild, and it's anecdotally, people report that it's very loving, very warm. You're held, you're embraced, you're encouraged, you're inspired, you're accepted, you're loved in that space, which allows for healing. And so my goal is to come at it from a harm reduction standpoint. As a recovering drug addict, it's important that I don't encourage people to use drugs, but for the people that want this stuff, that want the healing potential of something that will open up their mind in a super non-ordinary way, that will allow them to bring forth their subconscious in the form of the universe, the cosmos, and all that is, this substance will allow for that. And so my goal is to teach people how to do it safely in ceremonial settings with the intention of healing, the intention of progression, the intention of exploration, not necessarily recreational use, definitely not abusive use. It's not an abusive substance. It doesn't have the propensity for abuse, but we can abuse anything. Like a bicycle, we can go for a bike ride addictively, even though bicycles are not addicting. Like we can latch onto that stuff. Yeah. So knowing that there's a little bit of gray line there, I want to make sure that I bring a harm reduction aspect to it so that people can approach this, because it is a relatively new entheogen. It's introduced by somebody, Julian Palmer in Australia about 20 years ago, I believe, and 2 decades ago. And look at ayahuasca. It's been around for 500, 5,000 years, whatever. Look at the other things. They've all been around for a long time. Mushrooms before dinosaurs. So like, this is new, and there's an opportunity to create culture and to create ceremony and to create understanding around it that has not yet been solidified. And so I got the domain name in changa.com. So that allows me to be the source material expert, or at least the perceived expert right off the bat, just because I have the domain name that matches up with it. My job is then to hire the right people in order to make sure that it is the spirit of the, I was going to say plant, the spirit of the entheogen, the substance, lines up with my heart and lines up with the reality of the situation, which is there's a lot of good that can be done, but there's also a chance, not necessarily for disaster, but there's a chance for harm to be done. And so being in that position allows me to set things up in a way that serves humanity's evolution rather than distract from it. And that's kind of what I'm planning on doing with Changa.com.
That's beautiful. And yeah, whenever you get into these subjects, anything that's effective can be abused, right? Cocoa leaves got turned into cocaine and all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, and then those things, and that can be used in medical treatments. and numbers, or it can be used in a bunch of addictive ways. And again, it's the intent and creating culture around it, because you can create ceremony around anything and have a deep impact. But it's like what you do with it, it's what matters. And I love the care and the curation that you come from, and also the fact that you understand that it's something that, if used with reverence, is something that can actually provide massive benefit and open up doorways of possibilities to allow people to expand their hearts, expand their minds, and expand who they are, and for the greater benefit. Because a lot of people that haven't done psychedelics and plant medicine, those things, they poo-poo it. Oh, that's just your brain. Oh, that's just
it's
this.
just a drug.
It's just a drug. Yeah, just in a drug. Let me just go have a beer and a shot and some coffee, and I'll, you know what I'm saying? And it's like yes, and we are drugs. We are drugs. We are made of drugs. We are everything, and there's no society that doesn't have drugs. It's just when this weird Puritan society comes around. But again, you are playing with fire. Fire keeps you warm. Fire burns you. So you need to have something built with reverence, which I think is awesome. With that being said, and what you're doing, which I think is incredibly powerful, and done the right way, could have a deep impact on society at large. What is the dragon? What is the big thing? I know you say you don't have a holy grail, but to me, I'm gonna take an underlining holy grail of you want to have a fun journey that's not as achiever driven, right? Because there's this achiever driven, obsessive entrepreneur, zero sum, I must win game. And you're like, I can turn on, Super Bowl Anthony and get into this, but I don't want to. I want to be just have fun, Anthony. So it sounds like you want to have the achievement set, but you also want to have impact. And you also want to do it with a care and intention to be able to create this culture in a place that is something that you can be proud of. And so that piece is that. What is the dragon that might be preventing you from there? Something that you might need to face, or something that you may not be able to overcome, preventing you from that goal?
Specifically with Changa.com?
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot of good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got an entire business plan for yogapants.com. I've got this RV park I'm looking to purchase to create an RV park and a healing center. What? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it does when you understand the entire thing, right? Growing up with ADD, ADHD, overcoming those limitations, transcending my disability. It's kind of like there's so many things I can do. My doubts come into which is the right one to put all of me into. Do I want to put all of me, all of my effort into Changa.com? Do I want to put all of my effort into yogapants.com? Do I want to put it all into my affirmations program? Do I want to put it all into this RV park event space, healing space? Do I want to put it all into my wife and her new venture? She's starting a YouTube channel, Storytime with Miss Kathy. And
Beautiful.
Yeah, and she's into taking courses on art therapy and dance therapy and healing and that. So there's so much that I can participate in. It's where am I most in alignment, and then having, like, if I jump into one, it's like, I got this other thing that's a really fucking cool idea, right? And so for me, it's going to have to be committing to one at a time, because as growing up with ADD, I can multitask. And I might start 10 projects and finish them all at the same time. It would take somebody to do 10 projects one at a time, but I'm going to do them all at the same time. And so to commit to a single project has always been something I struggle with, because my gift is that I come up with creative business ideas. Myoatmeal.com, IIFYM.com, a couple other things that I had, the paleo butter, all these ideas that I've had, and all of these businesses that I've started, built, and sold, or whatever, come from this place that is like the center of God's gifting hand. It's just like, They come to me in dreams. They come, and when I see it, the light bulb flashes. I know it. I know when I get one of these ideas, and I know it's going to be, a banger. But I've got so many. It's finding the one that my heart is most in alignment with, and committing myself to that above all else, above all others. That is where I struggle.
Beautiful, man. That's that absolutely makes sense. I mean, it totally there's like a through line of this whole conversation, which was that alignment. What is the alignment that you seek? And then part of that is needing to let go of certain identities, like the identity of choice, and being able to do that, and picking a path and going through it. Because you kind of have a buffet of potential in front of you. And it seems like whatever one you choose, you're going to have to let go of all those other identities of what those things are to jump in fully to something else, which is a beautiful note to end this podcast on. So is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before maybe you tell them how to find your new business up and running, or where they can find out more details of things? Or maybe I do look forward to the day that you could be smoking changa at your RV park while wearing yoga pants. I know. I look forward to that space, but that just came to me as a visual, and sign me up for that journey. But is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them maybe how to get a hold of you, or if they're interested in learning more about what you're doing?
There's nothing I need to promote. Changa.com. I've said it a couple times. It's just a cheap cheese dick splash page right now. We're working on the website. Should be ready in a month or so. But if I was going to leave on any kind of note, or just any kind of just any kind of inspiration, or I would tell people that you're not alone in whatever struggles you're having, and there is always a way to transcend them. I personally believe that facing our fears, facing our trauma, facing our difficulties, surrendering to them, not believing the fear, but facing it, is the quickest path. Don't have to do psychedelics. You can do breath work. You can do therapy. You can copious amounts of exercise. There's a lot of different ways to approach these things, but if you don't take action towards changing for the better, you're basically refusing to grow, and you're not going to move emotionally beyond where you're currently at. So my encouragement would be to summon up whatever type of courage you need to take that first step, to call a therapist, to reach out to your friend that drops acid, and ask them about some ceremonial space if he knows anybody that does ayahuasca, to look up a breath work practitioner, to do some Wim Hof, to start journaling, to pick up the book, The Artist's Way. Even if you're not an artist, it's for everyone, to tap into our level of creativity and accept ourselves. Take the first step. First step's not going to hurt. The next few might. But if you don't take the first step, you're never going to reach the top of the ladder.
Anthony, brother, I really appreciate your time being on the show. Always a pleasure. Thank you for sharing everything. Thank you for sharing your journey, your stories, your lessons, your insights. And yeah, man. And thank you for being you, brother. I very much appreciate you. And much love, man. I will see you on the other side, my friend.
I love you, brother. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely, brother. Talk to you soon. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening.